This is the beginning of a 21-day experience. Now, it's a dip in and out experience. And the whole idea is that I'm going to share with you one simple, but very, very practical and very, very supportive idea with you every day over the next 21 days. I'm going to have some live classes like this. And then I'm also going to do some very kind of, 1 minute videos and a few other little pieces on my Instagram. Because I hear from so many people in the run up to the holiday, so many of my clients and so many people message me saying what a mix the holidays are. For some people, it's stressful all the way through. For some people, it's a mix of like exciting and wonderful, but then there's all kinds of other emotions that come up: stress, loneliness, fear, shame. And this is because we're dealing with, in the holidays, some quite major life experiences. Often we're navigating family dynamics. We're navigating space and time where we really have to think about what's been occurring in our year. And so today I wanted to talk about a very simple principle about what emotions really, really need, what they're yearning for, and how we can support them so we don't get stuck in them. Now, a few years ago, I was out with a friend and I was feeling really, really upset. I was feeling extremely ashamed of myself. There was an experience happening and I just felt so in it. I was just full of shame and it was really uncomfortable. And I said to her, I feel like such a loser. And my friend said to me, "Oh, love, that's so tough. I totally get it." And it was a light bulb moment for me because normally when we say things to our friends or our loved ones, I feel terrible, I feel upset, I feel like a loser. People will try to jolly us out of it. Oh, you're not a loser. Oh, no, you've got so much going for you. Or they'll kind of dismiss us. But it felt so good to say how I really, really felt and for her to acknowledge it, for her to see, oh, this feeling was here and I felt terrible. And she saw that and supported that. And I wonder if you've ever had a time like that where you've told someone how upset you feel, how emotional you feel. And instead of giving advice or jollying you out of it or try to convince you that you shouldn't feel like that, they just really, really empathize. Like you say to a friend, "I've had a really tough day at work." And instead of what a lot of people might say, which is, "Oh, well, at least you have a job in this bad economy," or "It's the weekend soon, don't worry about it," or "Don't be sad, I wanted to have fun tonight." And that doesn't feel great, right? When we show up and we tell somebody how we feel and they offer advice or try to distract us or move us out of it. And it can feel kind of dismissive. And instead, imagine what it would be like if you said to somebody, "I've had a really tough day." And they say, "Oh gosh, wow, that sounds rough. You want to tell me about it?" And even if you've never had somebody react like that, how does that sound to you when you say, "Oh, this has been really hard for me"? And they say, "Yes, I get it. I see you." Doesn't that sound so much nicer? Doesn't that sound lovely? Because what's happening is someone's seeing and hearing us. They're hearing what we're experiencing. They're not dismissing it or judging it. They're acknowledging that we have some feeling. And it can feel so good, so soothing, and so safe when people respond to us like that. So, this is what I want to explore today. What emotions are really yearning for. And one of the top, most significant things is empathy. And what I want to share is we don't need to wait for other people to respond to our feelings and our emotional experiences in a really empathic, supportive way. We can actually provide that kind of support to ourselves in a way that feels so nourishing. And what it does is it actually helps our emotions be given the space that they need in order to release, in order to have all the things they need to integrate. So I have this lovely quote from Janine Ross. I love her writing. And she says, all any feeling wants is to be welcomed with tenderness. It wants room to unfold, to relax and tell its story. It wants to dissolve like 1,000 writhing snakes that with a flick of kindness become harmless strands of rope. And it's this kind of transmutation, this kind of effort of empathy that turns our emotions from being so uncomfortable and so difficult to being something more neutral and able to release. For so many of us, we were taught to deal with emotions in a completely different way. Often we were taught to not acknowledge our feelings, to not listen to them, to dismiss them, to intellectualize them, or try and think our way through them. And how most of us were taught to be with emotions is not effective to help us move through that emotion. And what it means is emotions get stuck. They start playing out on repeat, coming up over and over and over again, and becoming a default for us. And what emotions want is they want to be seen, they want to be felt, and they want to be heard, and they want to be given enough space to release. And it's challenging, right? Because we haven't learned to do that with our emotions. Often we get lost in the story that our emotions are telling us. You know, this person is so annoying. And if they didn't do that like this, then I wouldn't be so angry. Or I'm so terrible. I'm such a loser. Why do I always do such awful things? We get lost in that narrative that the emotion is telling us. Or we try to figure it out. You know, if only I could just concentrate and really work through this situation that's come up, I can figure it out and the emotion will go away. I'll stop being so scared. I'll stop being so angry, or whatever emotion it is. Or maybe we try to numb and distract ourselves, you know, instead of dealing with that fear that's arisen or that shame. We watch TV, or we eat something, or we stay busy. There are so many different ways that we have been kind of encouraged to deal with our feelings or not deal with our feelings by doing things that don't actually face the emotion itself. And the challenge is that we might be able to kind of convince ourselves to stop feeling angry for a little bit, but that emotion will still come back. It will come back at a later stage in a different form around a different situation. And so we haven't actually released that emotion. And we want to release our emotions because they're not meant to stay here stuck on repeat. So the first thing we want to do is we want to detach ourselves from the story that the emotion is telling us. Because the thoughts that are spinning around our head are just being generated by the sensations of the emotion that we're feeling. So the source of our angry thoughts or fearful thoughts are here in our body. And our bodies hold the key to releasing emotions. So this work, this practice is about learning to step out of the story and focus more on our body. Now, for me, the most important first step is knowing that emotions don't want to be judged. They don't want to be pushed away. They want to be acknowledged and they want to be seen. And I think there is this, some ideas about emotions out there that if we acknowledge our emotions, they might get too big. If we actually look at the fear or the anger or the sadness, it will be too big for us, which I totally get. And there are things we can do to support ourselves with that. Or if we look at our emotions or acknowledge them, maybe they'll stay longer. They'll be more entrenched. That somehow, if we accept that we have emotions, it will make it worse. But emotions are completely natural. We're human beings. We will always have emotions. Humans are wired to have the whole gamut of emotion. We're wired to have anger and fear and sadness and excitement and love and joy. These are all natural human emotions. So my work is dedicated to sharing the techniques of how to stop feeling like our emotions are punishing us or they're wrong in some way. How we can learn to develop a more supportive approach so that they don't get like we don't feel like we're stuck in them, we're drowning in them. So that we can experience our emotions and release them. So emotions love empathy. Emotions are yearning for understanding and validation. And empathy and validation are so soothing to the emotional brain, just like what I mentioned earlier. They want to be connected with, they want to be welcomed, not pushed away and ignored. So we don't do this on purpose. We don't distract ourselves from fear or try to ignore the anger we're feeling at our partners or our friends or co-workers. We don't push them away on purpose. We're responding to them in the way that we've been taught, and usually by our families, right? How our families deal with emotions is usually how we deal with emotions. In my family, it was always, let's tell a joke. Let's not say, I feel sad. Let's tell a joke. Or let's hide it. Don't tell anyone that you're having any feelings because it's super uncomfortable. Definitely don't cry in front of other people. But that was just what my family had learned from their families, who learned from their families. It's these patterns that get passed on, right? So we're not doing this on purpose. We're not choosing to ignore our emotions or numb out from our emotions. And what I really love to encourage people to do is to really start thinking in this, like gently walking towards our emotions. If they've been really difficult for us to hold, to be with, to give space to, can we be really gentle in how we approach our emotions? allowing them to be here in a way that feels safe and possible for us. We don't need to force ourselves or push ourselves in any way. And everything in my world is about being gentle and thinking about what support we need. We're persistent because we really want to release a lot of these emotional patterns that are keeping us stuck. But we do it in this really kind and gentle way. And actually, the more kind of slow and steady and empathic we can be, the more profound the difference I've found. So, how do we use empathy to support releasing these emotions? So, in a kind of practical way, we might notice that we're feeling upset or emotional. Or we might notice that our thoughts have taken an emotional bent, like all of a sudden I'm feeling like fury and I'm blaming and I'm angry, and the thoughts are kind of going. Or I'm noticing some really fearful thoughts. Or we might just be feeling really uneasy and uncomfortable and just not present. And that can be a really common sensation that we're not sure what we're feeling, but we know that we're not relaxed, we're not here in the room, we're not here in the conversations we're having. So we can take a moment to just stop. And I always like to put a hand on my chest as a way of physical support. Just ask ourselves, oh, how am I feeling? What's happening here? Am I noticing some emotions? And even if we can't identify specific emotions, we're just noticing, oh, I feel kind of uneasy or just not present. We can work with that. And the first step is to offer ourselves some empathy and validation. So here is what it might look like. Can I give myself some space to have these feelings? And can I offer myself some empathy and validation? Like, gosh, these feelings make perfect sense. It's totally normal to feel fear and to be activated in situations like this. Anyone might feel annoyed in this situation. And like I mentioned in the beginning, sometimes it's easier to think about what we might say to someone we really, really love, like a friend or a child or our partner, someone we really want to take care of. Can we offer them that type of ourselves, that type of empathy? Like it's okay to feel anger. It's hard to feel this much fear. I know this is a tricky thing for me. This grief is tough. It's always been hard for me, but I'm going to stay with myself while I feel this. So we can offer ourselves these empathic ways of speaking to ourselves, really validating our feelings. It makes sense. I get it. I understand. Oh, this is a lot. And then a couple of things we can do to support our body to experience those sensations of the emotion. One of them is if we like physical touch, like I mentioned with my hand on my heart, we can also provide some physical touch in terms of touching our body, rubbing our arms. And when we do this for 30 seconds or more, we get a nice hit of oxytocin, the love hormone. And another really lovely thing we can do is a soothing hold for when emotions feel very alive and hard for us. So we're offering ourselves this empathy in terms of how we speak to ourselves. And we can do a soothing hold. So we get our hand, we put it under our armpit. We put our other hand, can you see, like this? Our other hand here. We might want to close our eyes and just allow ourselves to be contained, to hold ourselves as we're experiencing this feeling. And again, really offering ourselves that empathic validation. Another really beautiful resource is a regulating breath. And a regulating breath sends signals of safety and calm to our nervous system, which can help us experience this feeling without it flooding us. So it turns on the parasympathetic part of our nervous system, which is rest and digest. And it's a really simple breath. So it's a short, full inhale and a long exhale. We're doing this for as long as we need to support that feeling while it's still alive in our body until it releases. So, this simple act of offering empathy and validation to our feelings, regardless of what those feelings are, without judging our feelings, can be so powerful and help to start moving that emotion to release. Now, in reverse, we can also do that to other people. And as I mentioned in my story at the beginning, when someone did that to me, oh, it felt so wonderful. It helps us to create much more emotionally safe, stronger, connected relationships. When someone comes to us and they're visibly emotional, maybe they're having a little rant or they're a little panicky, and instead of giving them advice or commenting on whatever they're talking to us about, whatever their narrative is, we just say empathic, validating things like, oof, that sounds really tough. You want to tell me more about that? Or you didn't like that, did you? Or I totally hear you. That really makes so much sense. I think most people would feel like that in your situation. Or how does that feel for you? And here, what we're doing is we're helping to speak directly to the emotion, which is driving the story, the narrative. So we're trying to not get lost in what the story that they're telling us is, and instead directly acknowledge that emotion. So when I said to my friend, I feel like such a loser, she didn't start analyzing whether or not I was a loser or not, or in this situation, if I had or hadn't done the right thing. What she did was recognize there's some really strong feeling here and it wants support. And that is just the most beautiful thing to feel from somebody else. And the wonderful thing is we can offer it to ourselves. So that is my little idea, my little lesson for today. I'd love to find out if anybody has any questions. Um, And I will be doing my daily experience on Instagram. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, there's going to be a 3-day restoring inner calm workshop. You can come to any of them. You can come to one. They're not cumulative. They're all going to be wonderful. And they're going to be dedicated to really providing some support for our body and our nervous system over the holidays. So it's a series of exercises that get us really deep into a state of relaxation naturally without us thinking about it or making any choices, so that we can be as calm and as grounded and as balanced as possible for the holiday season. And it's a series of exercises that you can use day in and day out to support yourself with any type of overwhelm or stress. Wonderful. So if anyone has any questions, you're super welcome to put them in the chat box. Great. Okay. So if everybody cue yourself to offer empathy. Okay. So specifically around if you're feeling anxious, how can you cue yourself to offer empathy, relaxation? So if I'm feeling anxious, I will say to myself, gosh, I'm feeling a lot of anxiety here, and it's really tough for me. And I'm doing the regulating breaths, I'm doing the physical support, and offering that consistent empathy. Because for a lot of us, when we feel anxious, what we often do is we go into like fix it mode, or we go into distract ourselves mode, or we go into, I don't like this. This has to stop. What can I do to let it stop? But that feeling, and anxiety is often an anticipatory feeling around like maybe we're anticipating some fear down the road. It wants some space. It wants to be fully felt. So creating that dialogue of empathy with ourselves and not trying to push it away, not trying to say, I need this to go, actually supports the feeling to be fully felt and then to go, which sounds counterintuitive to many of us, right? Because it's if we give it space, often it feels like it's never going to leave. But it's actually by turning towards it, giving ourselves some support in terms of like the simple regulation exercises I shared, and really empathizing. Gosh, yes, this is a lot for me. And staying with it until it starts to move. Does that make sense? And it's this kind of like key thing that, of course, we don't want to feel like this. Of course, it's not nice to feel anxious or to feel fearful or to feel panicky. Like, and when I'm talking to myself in those states, I am acknowledging that and honoring it. Like, this is so hard for me. I've had so much panic in my life, and it's so hard for me to feel. And that's okay for me to find this difficult. Sometimes forget to do the right thing in that tailspin. Absolutely. And so, what can be easy here or easier here is if we start with emotions that we find less challenging, you know, Everybody has emotions, some emotions that they find more challenging than others. So it can be, we can start with those emotions that feel easier or less intense. So it could be like, you go to the shop, you're waiting in a queue for ages, and you're like, oh, I wonder how I'm feeling, or I'm feeling a bit of irritation. Oh, it makes sense that I feel some irritation waiting in this queue. Okay. Yeah, I've got things to do and I understand why I feel some irritation. We're not trying to make the experience different. We're not going into blaming other people. We're just like, yeah, I'm going to acknowledge and empathize with myself in this. And that's one of the keys, is that we're validating our emotions rather than the experience or the story, right? And this is especially relevant with other people, that we want to validate their feelings, and not necessarily, if somebody says, like if a small kid says, I was really angry, so I kicked him, we're not validating the kicking. We're just going to validate that they had a lot of feelings in that moment. And it's by giving that space, then we can talk to them about the kicking. But we need to validate their feelings first, like, oh. So start where it's the easiest, and then we can move to the more challenging experiences that kind of take us, 0 to 60 in a nanosecond. Wonderful. Okay. Great. So if you are read complete, this is the end of today's class. I'm going to share something about my upcoming program in January. But if you're ready to hop off, you're super welcome to, and I might see you in the days ahead with the other things I have to share. Thank you. So in January, I have 2 programs that are coming up. I have a 10-day Creating Healing Habits retreat, which is going to be I'm very excited about both of them. And over 2 weeks, it's split into 2. We're doing 10 days of really deep nervous system restoration. What does that mean? When we are continuously in states of stress, our nervous system can feel like, often we can feel very frazzled, day in and day out, we're going, doing. And when we have a lot of states of stress and we don't completely release that stress, or we're just in too much stress too often, it can leave us feeling really depleted. And so the idea of this 10-day retreat was that we do this nervous system techniques every day for 5 days. And then we have a little break and then we do it again. And it gets deep into our nervous system to release that kind of old stress, as it were, to kind of restore ourselves, restore our energy, so that we can move our nervous system into a state of healing and repair rather than stress and overwhelm. And it's a really lovely way to create a habit of how we show up and support ourselves every day with stress. So we do this kind of 10-day immersion so that as we go throughout our year, we've got these practices and these techniques down. And we can, anytime we're feeling overwhelmed, anytime we're feeling stressed, we can just bring up these exercises and release the stress that we're in. That's really lovely. And it's on little special offer until the end of the year. And then I also have a 6-week program, which is part of my longer Midlife Unbound program. It's a standalone course. You can also continue after the 6 weeks working, but it's a standalone course that gives you both the exercises and practices that help us break out of cycles of overwhelm, panic, and dread, and teaches us why this happens and what we can do to release emotional pressure and trauma. And it's a really beautiful program. It's going to be a small group. We're journeying through 6 weeks together. And you learn why you have these emotions coming up on repeat, what your emotional patterns are, and how to move into a place where you feel safe, grounded, and it's a foundation of calm. So it's more in depth than my 10-day program. There's more information, more neuroscience taught in a very simple way. And it's more of a deep dive. You get to work with me much more closely. I'm doing, personal support. I'm doing group sessions where people are sharing and workshopping, but also beautiful. Both of them are wonderful. So I have a coupon for both of those both of those classes. If you're interested, if you think I would love to work with Diana in January, message me and I will send you the information. And thank you so much for being here. Wonderful. Oh, you're booked on. Yes, great. Thank you so much for being here. And I look forward to seeing you in the days and weeks to come. Bye.